Welcome back to Stop, Look, and Listen. I'm your host, LaTroy Gardner. This week, it's a pleasure to be joined by motivational speaker, life coach, author, podcast host, Lester Young. How you doing, Lester?
Blessings, brother. Blessing, peace and blessings to you and your family, man. Invite. Appreciate that.
Peace and blessings to you as well. So, Lester has an amazing story that we're going to share with you today. First, let's speak on your childhood and the dominoes that led to you going through an unfortunate period in your life.
Great question, man. Great question. And a lot of people like to start with the peak of the iceberg instead of going to the bottom of the iceberg. I believe that a lot of decisions are made as a result of what takes place in our childhood for the most part. For me, I had a fairly decent childhood all the way up until about 16 years old. There was a tragic happened in my life, man. I lost my mother at 16 years old. Losing my mom's. I remember one day I came home and we had this disagreement about me washing dishes. As simple as the argument was, it was about dishes. You know, I ran into the house expecting to just run in the house, drop my book bag after school, and run back out the house to go play with my homies. And my mom was like, "Nah, you need to wash these dishes." She wasn't feeling 100%. She was a little sick, but I didn't factor all of that in at the time. So we got into this big argument. I pouted as a 16-year-old. Before you know it, I washed the dishes. I stormed out of the house. Came back later that day. She was like, "I'm going to talk to your father about your behavior because that was uncalled for, how you responded to me about the dishes, you know." So I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So my dad came home and he chastised me. He punished me, you know. He disciplined me, put it that way, you know. And I went to bed that night upset with my mom. I was like, "Man, I don't want to say nothing to you for the rest of the night." And I walked out of the house the next morning to go to school. And within about 3 hours later, my cousin came to pick me up from school and said, "Your mom passed away."
Wow.
You know, so that to me, processing the fact that my mom's died, and I felt like she died upset with me. And I felt like, I didn't get a chance to apologize to her. I was insensitive. So I internalized a lot of that guilt. And that guilt just turned into building that iceberg that led to the peak of the iceberg, which my peak of the iceberg was when I was 19 years old. I ended up taking a person's life as a result of a lot of poor decisions. A lot of poor decisions from 16 to 19 years old just put me in that cold state of mind where I was very inconsiderate in the life of another human being. I just wanted to die. So if I wasn't going to die, somebody else was going to die. And it was all consumed with the grief and the guilt that I was carrying, and never was able to articulate that pain of how it felt to lose my mother at the time.
Okay. So at that point of being incarcerated, just talk about your mindset at that point. Did you feel hopeless, or did you figure like that was the place you needed to be in order to rehabilitate yourself?
Well, initially when I was sentenced at 19 years old to life in prison, there was a numbness. I was numb by the fact that, how in the world am I going to spend this amount of time in prison? So I was numbed of the grief of the loss of my mother, the insensitivity that I had regarding the victim and his family. I was a very callous, really numbed person. And that numbness was just from the pain that I lost when I lost my mother. I couldn't cry after that. I felt like nothing in the world could bother me, you know what I'm saying, to the extent of me losing my mother. So when the judge sentenced me to prison for life for murder, I was like, I could do me, you know what I'm saying? And it took me some time. It took me about 3.5, 4 years before I really began to make a mental shift and really seeing that, wow, I'm in prison and I need to do something completely different with my life. So about 4 years into my incarceration, this is when I began that journey that was shifting and thinking about life differently, approaching life differently.
So you would attribute that to like a strengthening of your faith and kind of educating yourself?
Yeah, I tell people that I contributed a lot of it to the prison chaplains. The prison chaplains were individuals that took a liking to me, saw something in me, know that I was 19 at the time, sitting in prison, and they didn't want me to become a victim. So the first chaplain, named Chaplain Scotland, he gave me a book called As a Man Thinketh, So Is He by James Allen. And he told me, said, this is a book that you need to read and consume, break it down, because this is going to define your life for the rest of your life, your thinking process. He said, your thinking process is the reason why you're in prison, and your thinking process is either going to keep you in prison or you're going to be free once you change your thinking. And that's when that started the shift. And he would do weekly mentoring meetings with me. And every couple of weeks, he'd give me another book. The second book was Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, then the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I started seeing redemption. I started seeing transformation in some of the most dehumanizing environments, which is prison, that it all starts with doing a mental jailbreak. And that was starting with my thought process. And then I contribute another part of that too. When I was watching, one afternoon I was sitting in prison, and I watched Oprah Winfrey show one day, and she was talking about creating a journal of gratitude. And here I am making this shift. And now she was like, no matter where a person may be in his or her life, if you think about how many things you're thankful for on a daily basis, your perspective of life would change. And I started journaling in 1994, and I still journal to this day, 5 things that I'm grateful for. All of that was contributing to a shifting and allowing me to connect with something greater inside of that prison environment.
All right. So you spoke of the chaplains. Was there any other people, that was supportive inside the penitentiary and outside, like as far as family and friends that kept you motivated?
Yes, my family, of course, my father, my sisters, I have 3 sisters. They were definitely there for me, sending me books. Every time I would come across a book, and reading a book, you always get an introduction to another book, and I would send them a list of books and they would send it to me. But then I had a dear friend of mine, his name is David Brown, and he was a drug dealer that I looked up to when I was selling drugs, you know what I'm saying? And I was always aspiring, like, I'm going to beat this guy out. I'm going to make more money, hustle harder than him. And he was always that image. But a couple years before that, he ended up going to prison. And when I got sentenced to prison, I ended up meeting him there. So here it is, I'm going to prison, y'all. Like, yo, homie, let's get back to popping. And he was like, nah, bro, I done changed my life. I was like, you done changed your life, not you, bro. Like, not you. And he was on a different mindset. And that's the person that was inside of an environment that I knew personally. I saw transformation, and he began challenging me every day to write down. Every week I have to write down 10 words to build my vocabulary up, spell it. He just started training me and mentoring me in a different way. Here is somebody I looked up to in the drug game and that type of lifestyle that we were once living. And now he's like, yo, I influenced you in the wrong way. Let me give you something that is going to help you survive prison, but also make the best out of that life sentence. So he was one of the main individuals that contributed to a lot of my growth.
Okay, nice. So we see the banner behind you for Path to Redemption. So from my understanding, you started Path to Redemption while you were still serving time. Yeah. Just speak on getting to that point where it's like, I'm becoming a better person, showing signs of growth. Yeah. And now I want to share my gifts with others and using this path.
Yeah, that was key, because after a few years inside of the prison system, through journaling, reading books, I'm like investing my money in books, and my mind is completely different. My conversation was different. I didn't no longer wanted to hang with my homeboys who wasn't really about elevation. A lot of people inside of the prison, they're just content with where they're at, and I'm like, I need to be elevated. I'm going to elevate. And they were like, yo, man, you got a life sentence. Why do you need to go get a GED? Why are you reading so many books? Why are you talking different? So I'm like, because it was like, man, you're going to die in prison with a life sentence. And that just goes to show you the mindset of my homeboys. They didn't have any hope. So I started separating myself from them. And I was like, I can't, because as a man thinking, so see, if I continue internalizing what they project on me, before you know it, I will become a product of my prison environment. And I was like, I refuse to do that. So that book, James Allen, As a Man Thinker, I started creating these curriculums around positive thinking, daily affirmations. And I started finding a few individuals inside of the prison environment, like, hey, man, they was like, man, you different. I'm like, it was like, you different. I'm like, yeah, I'm different. Like, yo, I heard you serving life, man. What makes you so content and happy and thriving in this environment? I said, man, here's a book that I read that changed my mindset. And from there, through my journaling, I started seeing a value in the information I shared about myself in my journal. I started creating a curriculum, what is called the 5 Stages of Incarceration, which eventually I went on and wrote a book once I got out of prison called the 5 Stages of Incarceration. But it was all about the different stages that I was going through in prison. But the last stage of that was transformation and redemption. And I think that every person in prison want to be transformed and live a life of redemption, but didn't know how to reach it. So I taught those principles of that.
Okay, so just talk about the mission of Path to Redemption.
Our mission is to help men and women who are incarcerated navigate while they're in prison to create winning effects. And it first starts with helping them transform their thinking, which will transform their behavior. And upon release, one of my biggest challenges when I got out of prison after serving 22 years was I struggled with the acclimation process. There wasn't any information out there. There wasn't no programs. There wasn't a group or support group to help me deal with depression, deal with anxiety, deal with all of the things that came with post-incarceration. So this is where Path to Redemption focus on the aftercare after imprisonment is helping men and women acclimate by creating a support group around what I call the 4 principles of emotional intelligence, helping them have a sense of self-awareness, self-consciousness, helping them understand empathy and how to develop that and how to communicate with others outside of a criminal environment type setting.
Okay. So you just mentioned that you served 22 years in prison, and also somewhat speaking on the life of adjusting to freedom.
Yeah.
So we're in a country that, supposedly grants second chances, but it's difficult for a lot of those to find work. Because when you fill out an application, you have to make mention that you're a felon or you serve time. And a lot of employers frown on that or aren't willing to bring someone that they feel has excess baggage into their workforce. How did you just continue to push forward despite endless rejection?
Yeah. Going back again, as a man thinketh, so is he. And I spoke every day when I walked out of prison. I knew that the same principles that I survived in prison by positive affirmation, every day speaking life over my life inside of prison, I knew that I had to do that outside of prison. So when I walked out, I knew that there was going to be a challenge. You know what I'm saying? I started working for certain people or certain businesses for $50 a day. I'm working 10 hours. Could you imagine me making $50 a day when I'm going from leaving an environment or prior to prison, I was making thousands of dollars a day. Now you're telling me I'm only worth $50 a day. You know what I mean? And that's less than $5 an hour. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of rejection, but I was prepared mentally for the rejection. This is because I knew that I had something great in me. And I tell people that I walked out of prison with understanding what my purpose was. My purpose is to get out of prison and become a voice for those inside of prison. And I knew that every valley that I went through was all part of the process. You know what I mean? So from $50 being rejected to making $7 to going to companies and they're telling me, hey, we can't hire you because you're ex-felon, you're ex-con, you have a felony conviction, you have a murder conviction on your record. All of those things were part of the process for me because going back again, my mindset was prepared to go into the valley because I believed in 3 V's. Vision, valley, and victory. I had a vision for my life when I walked out of prison, but I knew and understand that in every religious scripture that I read, God always gave a person a vision. He gave them a valley. And my valley was going through the employment valley to collect the lessons that I needed to know so that I can become an advocate. Once I get employed, I can now become a real advocate for employment opportunities that will bring me to victory. And that victory was me now being self-employed, me being an organizer, me changing 5 counties here in South Carolina to change the policy around ban the box, removing that off an application. But I first had that vision. And that's why I tell a lot of people, you have to have a vision. You have to understand that with the vision comes a valley. And with the valley comes a victory.
Nice. So also for those that are, released, they have to deal with finding a place to stay or regaining the trust of family or loved ones. Did you encounter that as well?
No, because I was thankful that my family stuck with me for the entire 22 years. You know what I mean? It was not a hard process for me. I came home, I came to a better situation, a living situation 2 years later because going back again, I had a vision, and part of that vision was I had a 5-year plan for my life when I walked out of prison. And one of those part of that 5-year plan was to create the income by self-employment or employment, create the credit score to buy my first house. And within 2 years, I had on my calendar, within 2 years, I needed to establish 2 years worth of credit history, employment history that will put me in a position to buy my first house. And that's exactly what I did. You know what I'm saying? Because I had the support from family and friends to put me in that position. So I used these same lessons going back into my vision or my valley that I was in. I learned a lot of the lessons of challenging for housing or employment, education. And I take these lessons now and I pass them on to many of the men and women who are transitioning out of prison to put them in a position to become self-employed, to become a homeowner, that instead of renting a house, you can actually own a house, and it's not as complicated as many people think it is if you just do these particular steps.
Okay. So speak further on some of the projects that Path to Redemption has spearheaded.
I've been instrumental part of transforming the City of Columbia employment policies, Irmo's employment policy, Aiken, Orangeburg, and I forget the other one. It's like 5 counties that I've been instrumental in helping transform that policy when it comes down to hiring people with felony convictions. And also now I'm spearheading, challenging those with felony convictions down to get registered and get out to vote, because a lot of us, when we get out of prison because of probation or parole, we can't vote. But if you're no longer on probation or parole, I'm challenging these individuals to let's change the narrative. And changing that narrative is now getting out to vote, because we are the most unlikely people to be involved in politics. We're black men who have a felony conviction, who have never voted in our lives. And people say, well, why should we have any interest about sharing a message with you guys, or why y'all are interested in politics? I learned early on in prison that politics played an important role in creating the prison environment, culture, time, the sentence guideline, parole guidelines, all of that. So I realized early on that politics plays so many parts, has so many touch our lives in so many areas. So this is another thing that I do. I want to educate our brothers and sisters when they get out of prison to get involved in politics. And one of those ways is, clear your record, get registered to vote, and be involved in the local politics, what's going on in your city.
So you recently found out or went through the process and got cleared to where you will be voting in the 2020 election for the first time.
First time, bro.
speak on finding out that you're eligible, and why so many convicted felons, are unaware of their right to vote.
Well, for my situation, going back again to my goal, my vision, I had a 5-year goal that I was going to have to seek a pardon, because I had a life sentence. And even though the parole board granted me parole, I was still on a lifetime parole. And the only way I would ever be able to vote is I had to submit paperwork to get a pardon, which I did. In that 5 years, as soon as May the 15th, I submitted that paperwork on that 5 years. And a year later, September the 17th, I was pardoned, which now has restored all of my rights back. For the last 6 years, I've been advocating, go ahead, get out the vote. And here it is, I'm not able to vote. You know what I'm saying? Right. So now I'm excited that I'm able to vote. And this is why I'm using my story to tell other brothers and sisters hey, man, I got off. I was once denied the opportunity to vote. I got a pardon. Get registered to vote. If you're no longer on probation or parole, then get out and vote, man. It's just that simple. It's not it's not rocket science. All you have to do is just fill out a paperwork and get registered to vote, man.
Okay. So how can our brothers and sisters, with a record, find out if their state allows felons to vote?
You just have to actually contact your probation or parole agency, or contact the voter registration office and find out. Most states, particularly here in South Carolina, once you complete probation and parole, you're actually eligible to vote. Once you've completed your sentence and your time, you're eligible to vote. Now, some other states, like I know is a big challenge in Florida with Amendment 4. Amendment 4, even though people in Florida have completed their probation or parole, they're still denying them access to vote, because they say that now you have to pay fines and fees, and people are still paying fines and fees. And the Amendment 4 still prohibits them from voting. So that's a big thing that is taking place in Florida right now. And people are fighting for the rights of formerly incarcerated people to have the right to vote after completing parole and probation. But Kentucky just recently passed it, where they making it eligible for those who have felony conviction after you complete probation and parole to vote now. So just got to really find out what's going on in your particular state when it comes down to those who have felony convictions.
Okay. So give me your thoughts on prison reform and changes you'd like to see in the criminal justice system.
I think one, I would like to see more formerly incarcerated people who actually went through the prison system and who have gotten out and thrived a level of success to go back into the system to help create better curriculums into the prison system. During 1994, they passed the Anonymous Crime Bill. The Anonymous Crime Bill denied a lot of rehabilitation programs inside of the prison system. So from about 1996 to now, a lot of the systems have been stripped of real rehabilitation. And I'm not just talking about a GED. We're talking about Pell Grant opportunities where individuals able to go to college inside of prison. Now they're denied that opportunity. That's another thing that I advocate for. And on a federal level is that they reinstate the Pell for allowing those who are inside of the prison to get higher education, because the GED is not going to get you anywhere when you walk out of prison. It's going to keep you at a disadvantage when you walk out of prison. And so I believe that they need to take under consideration the expertise of individuals like myself and others who have been in that system a period of time to create better programs to deal with the mental health issues, deal with the emotional adjustment inside of prison, outside of prison, and find out from me or in people like me what made you successful. Prison didn't make us successful. It is things that we did individually that made us successful. So I always use this example, like prison in South Carolina, I think they pay almost $40,000 a year for one individual incarcerated, right? So imagine, I did 22 years in prison. I don't know the exact number, but they paid $40,000 every month, every year for me to be in prison for 22 years, right? So that's in the millions of dollars, right? Now
it's about 800,000.
800,000, right? Yep. That they got the state, that taxpayers invested in me, right? So now here it is. I made parole. I walk right out with $800,000 of investment, and you never ask, like, man, how did you do it? And what could we do with this $800,000 that we invested in another person like you? How could we make more individuals, produce more individuals, or produce an environment that will produce more individuals like yourself? You see what I'm saying? That's just a business concept. Like $800,000 you poured into me and many other individuals who have gotten out of prison and successful. And the Department of Correction or the governor never says, we need to sit down and talk to these people, because they are the ones that are the positive deviant behavior. They created a positive behavior after prison, and we need to figure that out. So I just think that they need to put more people like myself at the table of discussion when it comes down to policy making and programs to help people inside of that system.
Right. So I always feel like experience is the best teacher, and we need soldiers like you, more than ever, providing a voice to those that are often voiceless in our society. Would you change anything about your journey?
Only other than me taking the life of another human being, you know what I'm saying? That's something that I'll forever live with, is the fact that I took a human being's life. And that's what I stand on every day, that motivates me every day, is that I got to do something to make this man proud of me. You know what I'm saying? Honor his spirit to the best of my ability, honor his family who physically sees me from a distance. Like, I have to live my life in a way to honor them. But other than that, my journey, man, has made me into the person that I am. But I deal with a level of guilt knowing that I took a human being life, and I stand on this level of success as a result of that.
Have you been in contact with his family at all?
Yes. And that's part of the celebration. Is once I got a pardon, I was able now to establish a better line of communication with the family. And I'm looking at, doing something to a little more extensive as far as doing a scholarship program under Path of Redemption to honor their brother. I'm just going to be talking with the family in the coming weeks and how we could continue to honor. I would like to continue to make the investment in honoring their brother. And one way I want to do that under my organization is creating a scholarship fund in his name, and to give back to some of the kids in our community that are struggling with gang culture, incarceration, and drug addictions.
Okay. So you've sort of downplayed a lot of your activities regarding Path to Redemption. So I'll just share some of them. Like I said, you're the author of 5 Stages of Incarceration. You've been sending copies of the books to juvenile detention centers, like in Ohio.
Yeah. We just sent out like 50 copies, and that's part of the, like you said, that's something I want to do, continue to expanding that, because this book is a personal testament of redemption. So everybody know when you're in prison, man, it's hard to get $15 for a copy of a book. you know, but I know that that one book that the chaplain gave me, As a Man Thinketh, So Is He, by James Allen, changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life in prison. You know, so I know that this book, when a guy sees this book right here, they'd be like, man, this guy was in prison. And they'd be like, yo, they read the back, he did 22 years. And then they read the story. That gives them redemption hope. Like, man, I can live a path of redemption because he did it. You know, so everything I do now is like, how do I inspire these brothers who are sitting back, maybe catch a video on the news and they hear about me getting an opportunity to vote. And they're sitting in that prison cell like, yo, when I get out of prison, I'm going to do the same thing. Just that 30-second news clip or just this one book, you know what I'm saying, could help change someone. And that's what it's about for me, man. I want to continue to inspiring our brothers and sisters inside that prison system. So I raise money because I don't have funds to send out 100 copies to every juvenile or prison or county facility. So I normally do some fundraisers online to get people to make a donation to it. And we just send those books out to those brothers and sisters, man, to be inspired towards greatness and redemption after prison or while they're serving time.
Okay. Well, tell us where we can donate.
You can go to redemption.org. You can go there and you'll see a donation button on my website. You can see some of the work that we're doing. You can just hit that button and make a donation. Like I said, you make a $15 donation, you can send one copy of this book. You donate $50, you can send 10 copies. $100, you can send 20 copies, and just send them out to the prisons. This is a way of paying it forward to the men and women inside of the prisons that are returning home, returning back into our community, and they need some more inspiring stories. And I know what the story of Nelson Mandela did to me. I know what the story of Malcolm X and all of these other individuals who were inside of a very similar environment as myself that brought about transformation, and it inspired me. So I want to be one of those individuals to inspire other men and women inside of the prison system.
All right. So before we close, Lester, is there anything else you'd like to plug? And also, please leave us with some powerful words of motivation.
I would just say I appreciate it. I don't really have anything else to say other than, you know, I would encourage you all, if you can support us in making a donation to Path of Redemption to send books into the prison system, will be truly a blessing for not only me, it's not for me, but to the men and women who are in prison, who don't have the means, but are looking for redemption, and just one book can transform their lives. A positive word of motivation that I always live with, man, is not what happens to you, it's how you respond to the situation. Whether you're inside of a prison or you're not in a prison, we all experience some form of calamity, some form of adversity every day of our lives, a challenge. But so it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it. And that's one of the things that we got to always remember, that whatever we're going through, it's all about building a testimony. And remember the 3 V's: vision, valley, and victory. That God has given you a vision for your life. And that vision, you're going to always see yourself. You're going to always have to go through the valley to be able to be rebuilt and reshaped and remold so that you can have the victory. And there's never no success without a valley. All
right. And on that note, Lester, I appreciate everything you're doing. Continued blessings to you and your family, to the movement. I'm proud of you, and I hope you look forward to that experience of heading to the ballot in a couple of weeks.
November 3rd, we're going to throw a party, brother. But I appreciate it. May God continue to bless you and your family as well, brother.
All right, so for Stop, Look, and Listen, this is LaTroy Gardner signing off. See you next week.
Thank you for checking us out on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe for more great content. And don't forget to check out our website at govradionetwork.com.